أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد الأمين وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين يا رب العالمين. Dear respected viewers, I'd like to welcome you back to this, your show from the holy city of Karbala, Back to the Basics. I am your host Yahya Seymour, and of course we are discussing our differences with others, the fact that we live in a very diverse world. We are of course going to encounter differences amongst our own peers, amongst our own people, amongst the people that believe in the same religion as us, amongst the people that even believe in the same school of thought as ourselves. How do we encounter such differences? And how do we come to a systematic way to know that what we are upon is correct? Or rather, how would we judge that what others are upon is incorrect, other than the mere subjective standard of, well, I believe this is true and it goes against what you believe and therefore what you believe is false? Of course, we want to escape from the realm of personal pontification, issuing personal fatwas, and judging people according to our own belief systems. Because at the end of the day, when I say that someone is wrong, I need to have good evidence that they are wrong. I need to be able to engage with what they say on the basis of a set standard. And there needs to be a certain canon of evidence which is applied and utilized in order for this discussion to have any form of fruit whatsoever. Dear viewers, we are returning to our discussion on the worldview of Christianity, which of course, as I will constantly maintain, and I constantly maintain this because it is important to note that we do share commonalities. There are certain people that believe that it is more fruitful to discuss our commonalities, and of course, I have no problem discussing our commonalities in a godless world in which people are trying to remove God from the public sphere. Let us discuss our commonalities. Let us come to understand one another, and let us understand what each party believes about their particular beliefs. Of course, it is not my aim in this show to discuss what Christians believe without, of course, engaging in why I reject what Christians believe. This is, of course, a sensitive topic. People are very sensitive when it comes to others discussing the incorrectness and the fallacies in their own belief systems. Now, of course, the reason that this is so sensitive for many is actually due to the fact that many of us feel passionately about something without having justifiable reason for believing in it. As in, that is to say, the intellect might go against it, but at the end of the day, because we're comfortable with it, because we've adopted it in some partisan, biased manner, we choose to hold on to it strongly because we see no other option but to continue and erect a barrier of self-defense. Now, of course, it is my prayer that we all approach this topic with equally the same amount of sincerity. Shias out there, I want us to be sincere in analyzing our beliefs. Everyone else out there, I want you likewise to be sincere in analyzing your beliefs. Now, am I going to lie and pretend to you tonight that I don't have a position? Of course not. My position is set. I am here in Karbala. I am wearing the clothing of a student of knowledge according to the Shia Islam traditional faith, or the modern day clothing of a student of knowledge rather. There are many students of knowledge that do not wear this as well. And of course, I believe that what I am upon is true. But I am open for that to be questioned. I am open for that to be challenged. And likewise, it is my hope, my friends who are tuning in, anyone who happens to believe in a different religion, that you yourselves would likewise be willing for that question to be put forward and for your own views to likewise be challenged. Now, of course, one thing I would like to state is there's definitely a difference between challenging what you believe and being grotesquely offensive about what you believe. Now, these are things which might not be so apparent to us when we're first engaging in heated discussions. I myself, in my youth, have been someone that's very aggressive in promoting my beliefs and the truth claims which I hold dearly. However, in discussing the beliefs of others, it is necessary, it is very, very necessary, especially in this world in which people are, of course, doing certain things in a certain way. And what I mean by that is, most people are going on with their business and they're not persecuting others due to their beliefs. It's necessary in such a world that we would maintain a level of decorum and a level of respect for those who choose to believe what they choose to believe. Of course, I'm addressing people that live in the Western world primarily, and in the Western world we have a degree of religious freedom, religious liberty. And this is really one of the benefits of the Western world, where we are able to practice what we believe freely. In order to do that, it is necessary that we would afford and accord the same level of respect to those who differ with us and happen to be born upon different religions. For most people do not actually actively make a choice, but are indeed born into the religion that they choose to espouse. Nonetheless, I think that suffices, inshallah ta'ala, as an introduction. One last reminder, dear viewers, if you're not from a Muslim background, please don't be offended by what I say if you are Christian, and please feel free to email the channel, send a message to the channel, and challenge my claims about the Christian doctrine if you feel that I am being incorrect, misportraying your beliefs, or have made a slip in my reasoning. Back to where we begin with any worldview. What is the nature of God according to that worldview? I've stated already that Christianity is, of course, our Abrahamic cousin. They share many similarities with us in the sense that if we look at the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, we would see that there's a plethora of prophets who are likewise mentioned in the Quran. So at the very least, we start off with that commonality. We believe that whatever Christianity became, whatever it is now, its original source has some form of leanings and origins and foundations in the original revelation given to those prophets of God. Those prophets who were sent by God to communicate the word of God to men. And of course we believe that unfortunately, like many other things, religion is prone to being corrupted and distorted over time, and this is one of the things that has occurred within the Christian religion. But when it comes to the doctrine of God, we have already mentioned that the Christians, who are the majority of Christians in the world, the major three sects, or the major three denominations, that is to say Eastern Orthodox, or we can just call it Orthodox for a lack of better terms. Well, it's the Eastern Orthodox in order to distinguish it from every church which will call itself Orthodox, because Orthodox just means that sect which is remaining true to the original position, or the saved sect, essentially. We have the Roman Catholic Church, which is of course the largest, and we have the Protestant denominations which split off from the Roman Catholics and the Eastern Orthodox. Of course, all these sects believe in the doctrine known as the Trinity. I have defined the Trinity previously as the belief in one God, one being known as God. But within that being there are three distinct persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and they believe that these three beings co-inhabit the being, these three persons rather, co-inhabit the being of God, and co-inhabit that being of God simultaneously. That is to say, he is not at one point the Father, at another point the Son, and at another point the Holy Spirit. I've also stated that that belief is further compounded because they believe that when Maryam, or Mary, the mother of Jesus, the mother of Isa alayhi salam, gave birth, she gave birth to Jesus, who for them is the incarnate Son of God. And what does that doctrine entail? It entails that there was two natures to Jesus, one fully divine and one fully human, and that these two natures co-inhabited and did not clash. So this is the doctrine. And what are some of the issues we have with this particular doctrine? Of course, there's many. And when I bring forward these particular dilemmas, these are not dilemmas only fought out by Muslim thinkers. Rather, these are dilemmas observed and brought forward by many rational human beings, which demonstrates that indeed the rationality given by Allah Azza wa Jal to human beings has the ability to break the problem of incorrect doctrine. And of course, when I state the rationality, I of course mean the ability to recognize contradiction and to recognize irrational thought. Not merely someone's personal desires where they say that I don't like the fact that miracles can occur, or I don't believe that God can intervene in the world. Going back to these issues on the Trinity, we would see that many intelligent, sincere, Trinitarian believing Christians today have admitted and conceded a very important point. From amongst them are individuals like William Lane Craig, individuals on the far end, opposite extreme of William Lane Craig, individuals like Dr. James R. White, who is of course a Calvinist and less philosophically inclined, in addition to a plethora of other intelligent Christian thinkers and leading philosophers of the age like Dr. Richard Swinburne. They have conceded a very important point. What is that important point? You will have heard me mention that the Bible is composed of two separate documents. When I say two separate documents, we mean two separate canons, that is to say, two largely believed in set of books. The Old Testament, which of course is known in Judaism as the Hebrew Bible or the Tanakh, the book believed in by the Jews. And likewise the Christians have added to that what is known as the New Testament, a book containing epistles, gospels, letters, and other books of an apocalyptic nature, which were believed and agreed upon by the Christian church by the 3rd century as a final canon. These two books, when you analyze them, you would notice that there is a level of discontinuity. And what I mean by discontinuity is the fact that you would see that the concept of God in the Old Testament is radically different to the concept of God in the New Testament. I'm not merely talking about semantical differences. I am talking about differences on a fundamental level. For the Christians who believe in the New Testament, likewise believe in the Trinity. And even if we were to take away the doctrine of the Trinity, then the first key difference is in the belief in the incarnation. So what is going on and what has led to this difference? Is it the case that the Old Testament prophets, according to these Christian thinkers, believed in the Trinity, or did they not? These very intelligent individuals, and many more like them, have conceded full-heartedly that the revelation of the doctrine of the Trinity was not one that came about in the era of the Old Testament. That is to say, the community of Moses, the community of Abraham, the community of Jacob, the community of all the Old Testament biblical prophets, according to Christian apologists, or at least these major ones, did not believe in the doctrine of the Trinity. Now, of course, this is a very rational and very intelligent concession to make. And the reason for this is when you would see that this entire doctrine was absent from their midst, you would have to somehow come up with a justification for why, if God revealed himself as a Trinity, you would have this apparent absence of continuity. That is to say, if God revealed himself to Moses, to Abraham, to Jacob, when he revealed himself to these prophets, why did the community not understand he was a Trinity? And why is the doctrine of the Trinity something only understood and invoked at a much later period by the community that believed in Jesus, if we are to take this narrative seriously whatsoever? Of course, dear viewers, I remind you again, my intention is not to offend, and my intention is genuinely, with all sincerity, to promote, well, not to promote, but to put forward the doctrines of Christianity as they are genuinely believed in by the believers of Christianity. Dear viewers, we're going to take a very short break, and when we get back, we'll continue this point, inshallah ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear viewers, thank you for enduring that very short break. And we were saying before the break that there is an apparent problem which exists now within the discontinuity between the revelation of the Old Testament and the revelation of the New Testament according to Christian believers. Now, of course, our position as Muslims, just to highlight this for anyone that wants to ask, our position is that the New Testament and the Old Testament are not even necessarily the original Injil or the Torah. So it is not that they have been corrupted according to us, rather we believe that these documents are questionable from the very inception. The very codification of these documents is something dubious for us. We have no good evidence to suggest that these were ever the original documents revealed by Allah Azza wa Jal from the perspective of Islamic theology. And the reason I say that is because my critique right now is not one which is external, it is rather an internal critique, inshallah ta'ala. Why is it problematic that God would reveal himself to the Old Testament Hebrew prophets as one God, one Unitarian God who they had a Unitarian concept of, only to thereafter reveal himself as a trinity in the time of Jesus, if we are to believe the claims of Christianity to be true? The reason that this is problematic is highlighted and laid out very systematically by one of the more diligent philosophers of our time who works heavily on the issue of the Trinity. His name is Dale Tuggy, and he runs a blog known as trinities.org. He names the problem the girl with three dads. And it is phrased in a rather humorous way, but I believe he has phrased it in such a way so that it's obvious that he is not meaning nor intending to cause grotesque offense in the analogy he gives. It is merely trying to bring the understanding of the problem closer to the mind of the reader or the viewer in this particular case. Now, of course, if anyone is offended, then I apologize in advance. That is not our intention. The girl with three dads. Little orphan Annie lived anonymously among the many orphans in a Los Angeles orphanage. Like all orphans, she longed for the love of a parent, though she was forced to make do with shallower and less stable human connections. But one day, in her 8th year, she received a long-distance phone call from New York City that changed her life. On that day, she discovered she wasn't an orphan at all. The man on the phone, named Fred, introduced himself as her father and initiated a wonderful parental relationship which guided Annie all the way to adulthood. For complex reasons, the relationship had to remain long distance. Annie stayed at the orphanage, but had frequent communications with her loving dad. Fred said he was her only dad, and that she would listen to him over all others and obey him because he had her best interests in mind and loved her like no other. He taught her what to do and what to avoid, patiently nurtured her, and made her life worth living. At times he sent money, people, and other provisions to help her, though he remained in New York City. With such provision and guidance, Annie grew up, left the orphanage, went to college, and became a professor of philosophy specializing in ethics. Though, like all children, Annie sometimes neglected her parents, she never lost touch, and during one conversation in her 35th year, Fred told her something that made her blood boil with anticipation. He was coming to Los Angeles to visit her. Finally, she would get to know things about him that can't be discovered over the phone. She counted the days and the night before her dad's arrival was a sleepless one. Fred told her how to recognize him at the airport. He'd exit the plane wearing a t-shirt with the words, "I love Annie." At the airport, she held her breath as people exited the plane into the terminal, and her heart leapt when a man entered wearing the expected t-shirt. But her delight was immediately clouded by confusion when two further, similar-looking men entered wearing the same sort of t-shirt. Perhaps, she thought, my dad is playing a joke on me. She checked a nearby plant to see if it concealed a candid camera, but found none. Approaching the first man, she squeaked, "Dad, it's Annie." It turned out there was no man named Fred. The three men, strikingly similar, but having some important differences, explained their arrangement to Annie over the following days. Their names were Dawn, John, and Ron. Dawn was John's father, but she was unclear about the relationship of Ron to the other two. But for some reason which they never explained, the three had freely decided to initiate a 3-on-1 relationship with Annie, though she thought it was a 1-on-1 relationship. It seems that Dawn, John, and Ron took turns talking to her on the phone, always using a voice disguising device to render their voices indistinguishable, and perfectly communicating to each other what went on. Thus was born the fictional character of her dad, Fred. Fred was just the group of three men. While none of the three was her biological father, they were all somehow involved in her production in a way she did not understand. Perhaps each contributed a third of my DNA, Annie thought. At any event, there was no mother, and no one else was involved in producing her, she was sure of that. Annie's reaction to this discovery followed a certain progression. First, there was utter deep shock. She had suspected that her dad was a committee and not a man. Second, she decided that in a way, she had three dads, and this was a wonderful discovery. After all, during their visit in Los Angeles, she found that Dawn, Ron, and John each individually had some winsome traits she formerly ascribed to her dad: wisdom, kindness, attentiveness, humor, and so on. She was grateful to each for his portion of love and provision she had received. A third phase of her reaction was less happy. She realized that Dawn, John, and Ron had deceived her, and as far as she could tell, they did so without any good reason. She missed Dad. Whilst the analogy is somewhat humorous, somewhat crude perhaps, dear viewers, I hope you can see what the problem is. This belief begets that Allah Azza wa Jal, that God, according to this model, is a divine deceiver, and that is indeed something we should all consider very carefully. We'll continue this analysis in the next episode, for we have run out of time, and I apologize if I have offended anyone whatsoever. Please know that it has not been my intention. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.